Hi, I'm Derek Hopper with Principal LED, and today we are going to go over how to install the various parts of the Stik, new product offered by us, and it is going to include how to measure and cut the extrusion itself, as this is a custom product that's going to be important in the field. We're going to go over how to place in the various modules that are compatible with the Stik, and then we're going to go over how to use the installation brackets when it comes to mounting the stick in your cabinet, as well as a T-bracket that can be used to join two pieces of the extrusion together. To get started, first thing you're going to want to do is a site survey of your sign, whether it's in the shop or out in the field. This is going to be useful in both new construction and retrofit applications. So once you have your survey done and you know what length this needs to be in, please note that if you are doing a retrofit and you're using our adapters for the retrofit sockets, that you will need to accommodate for the length of the bulb itself. A 6-foot bulb is not actually 72 inches, it's 69.91. Things like that are going to be included on the data sheet attached. It'll have the reference guide so that you know what size bulb is going to, what that translates to for an actual dimension when you're cutting these. But for this instance, we're going to assume it's a new construction and you need a 2-foot piece. Just going to come in, start at one end. All of these will come in 8-foot sections, and you're just going to start at whatever end you want to start with, measure it out. In this case, I'm going to demonstrate a 2-foot cut section. Bring it up to the side, go to the end, use your pencil, and just come in and mark it. Whether it's on the side, in the center, doesn't really matter, as long as you can take a T-square if you want to get more exact. This stuff is pretty flexible, so if you do happen to get a little short or you are a little long, you can either shave a little bit more off. If it's too short, it's fine. We'll go over in a little bit with the mounting means that it's a little bit more forgiving, so it won't be the end of the world. Once you have it in place, you can cut this. This is aluminum, so your options are pretty versatile. You can use a handsaw with a metal blade on it. If you had a clamp and a sawzall, you're welcome to use that. A bandsaw would work as well if you're in the shop, a chop saw. It's really down to what you have available. The only thing we would really recommend not doing is using any kind of tin snips, because it will warp the end and you won't be able to use the retrofit adapter, the L bracket for new installation, or the T bracket if you need to splice a couple of these pieces of aluminum together. But once you're all done, you make your cut, come out looking like new, and you have a 2-foot section that is ready to go on to the next step of installing the LEDs. Alright, now that we have our extrusion cut down to length in the 2-foot section that we previously went over, we're going to look at the placement of the modules and how to install them into the extrusion. So for this example, I'm going to do a double-sided stick with 3 mods on each side. It is important to note when it comes to the spacing on the LEDs that we are going to provide a table on our website that has all the various products that are compatible with this. Right now I have our 24-volt Pinnacle, but our Patriot line, Quick Mod 1, 2, and 3, as well as the Pinnacle 24-volt modules I have here are all compatible and will fit into this extrusion. One of the other things that we're going to have on there are tables that indicate what kind of spacing you can look for when putting these and building out your stick. Now, in this particular instance, you can see that I can't quite go fully stretched here. So we're going to go over how to measure in, where to put the first and last module, and then really, once again, how this product is a lot less about being pinpoint accurate and more about making it work and for what you need in the field for those times where you don't have the ability to have a custom-made assembly by us or whoever it may be. So first thing that we want to point out is that because of the holes that are on the mounting means, whether you're connecting this piece to another piece to make a 10-footer or the L bracket during the installation for new construction, you do have to keep in mind that there are holes on those that will more or less dictate where you need to place your first module and how to accommodate for that. So you're going to want to come in 1.5 inches minimum from both sides. So come to your end on one side, make your mark, go to the other, make your mark. There's no cutting that's involved there. That's more or less just letting you know that's where that's the furthest I can go on one direction or the other, so that you don't end up placing a module where you're gonna have to drill through. What we don't wanna happen is you get these in place and then have to pull them back up and risk harming the module or the wire connection when you're trying to pull it out. They do fit, but they are very tight and friction fit. So when you peel that backer off the module and then lay it in here, it's going to take some force to get it out. And the less you do that, the better, because again, not harming the LEDs is gonna be the name of the game here. So now that we have our marks, I'm gonna start on one side. I'm just gonna take the end of that module and do the best I can to line it up with where I put my mark for the 1.5 inch to accommodate for the mounting means. And from there, you're just gonna start on one side, press it firmly in, and then using the palm of your hand or your thumbs, do the first one. Now, as I mentioned a second ago, since this length does not work fully stretched to have 3 of these pinnacles, what I would recommend doing is you can go in ahead of time and measure it out. So we know that this is where my first one needs to go. I can come in, measure the distance between these 2 modules, and then just put a center mark on there. So in this case, I put my first and last in, again, looking out for that 1.5 inch mark on this side. I place in the mod, and I'm good to go. Now from here, you can get precise, or if you're you're in a hurry, just eyeball it. Okay, that looks about halfway, that's good. If you want to do it more precise, that's fine as well. Just use your ruler, 13 inches, so I know that at the 6.5 mark, I'm going to need to put another mark right there, and then just center my LED between, or on top of that mark. Okay, so this side's done. What I want to go over next is when you are building these out, because there are different products that are usable with this extrusion, you really do need to pay attention to the LED data sheets to look at run footage so that you don't overload it. In this case, obviously, we're going to have 3 mods on one side, 3 on the other, so we don't have to worry about run footage or anything like that. But it's a good way to showcase how we can do this. You know, we talk about splitting loads and home running and all the time, so when you're building your own stick, if you want to, because it does allow with the wire gap, you can come to this other side and you don't even have to cut on top. You can just loop it around and then marry it up with your stuff on the other side. If you want to get more exact, again, you can go in there, measure 1.5 inch, measure your 6.5 between, and then go. But again, you can just come up, kind of eyeball it with the other side, press it firmly into place, press it in, and now you have a completed double-sided stick. What this does is when you do power it up and you tie both negatives together and positives, this creates a full circuit, so you don't have any voltage drop. Again, on this product, being 24 volt and only 3 modules, it's not going to come up often, but you can do up to 45 of these on a power supply. So if you did have a longer stick where you had 22 mods on either side, doing this kind of setup would ensure the most brightness and even illumination across the stick. But if you don't want to have to deal with this loop at the top or excess wire or anything like that, you do have the option of a couple different things. If you're going to cut it and terminate it up here, that's fine. Cut, cut, and at that point, use your UL rated and NEC rated wire nut just to cap the end to avoid any water intrusion into that wire. I would recommend using outdoor silicone rated if you're using these in an outdoor application. You're good to go. You just wire up your power supply to the other side and you're set. The other option is if you don't want any wire, you can come in even closer, terminate it as close to the module as possible, and then use any electrically rated silicone to just come in on top, and where those electrical leads are, just put a little dab on both sides to make sure there's not going to be any water ingress into that could cause shorting and damage to the LEDs. Last 2 processes we're going to go over is how to use the T-bracket for the installation when you need to marry 2 up. So we have our 8-foot section here, out of frame obviously, and then our 2-foot section that we've been working with. You will run into instances where you are working with a 10x10 cabinet and need something longer. This is where you have the T-bracket to accommodate it. Slides in, and now you have your 10-foot bracket or your 10-foot piece. But going over on how to measure and secure this in place once you have it measured out, cut to length, everything you need. And do make sure when you're cutting to length on this that, you know, this is a true 8-foot piece, this is a true 2-foot piece, so if you need 10 feet, you're gonna need to accommodate for the space that this bracket creates. So please remember to measure twice, cut once. So, easiest way without having to use a extra tape measure is coming into both sides with the T-bracket, just using your pencil to mark where that's going to land so that you know where to put your screw once this is in place. Come to the other side, go through the same thing. You don't have to use it, especially if you're using a self-tapper. If you don't have any self-tapping screws in the field, I would recommend pre-drilling these holes beforehand to make it easier on yourself. If you do have self-tapping screws or anything like that though, and you have a punch in the shop, just go in, mark it, mark it. Put one side in. Alright, now that the T-bracket is in place and both screws are secured, you can see that now they are not coming apart and you have a functional piece that you can now install in your 10-foot cabinet. Last piece that we're going to do, and just to point out, this is where that 1.5 inches that we made sure to have spacing for on the LED came into play from earlier. Moving on down, you can see that we're going to do very similar setup with the L bracket that we use for mounting. I would recommend to put the L bracket onto the stick and make sure it's secure before you go to mount it into the cabinet. If you are measuring these sticks out to be the exact length you need when they're installed, putting the brackets at the bottom of the cabinet first is going to create a problem when you go to try to slide them on. Alternatively, if you did do that, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to uninstall them. While we do use the slit that's in this, that's built into it to accommodate it, like that, if you already have it in place and you don't have the room to play with it or anything, you are able to just go put it on either side and install it that way. It's not going to hurt anything and it's still perfectly functional. But we're going to go through the process of making sure that you use the slot. So again, lifting it up, putting the bracket in place. You're going to use your pencil just to mark where that's going to be. You do not have to use both holes. If, again, you're out in the field and you happen to forget to leave room, full 1.5 inches for it to accommodate that, you can just use the bottom hole, which obviously has a much smaller footprint. So I'm going to use that smaller one. Making my mark again, putting the bracket in its place, grabbing my self-tapping screw, and it is now ready to go. Now, as I don't have a cabinet on hand or small enough to demonstrate, this is going to be the bottom of our cabinet, and we're going to go over the last little bit of once you have your bracket installed onto your stick, how you're going to place it. You're going to measure it out, make sure that you have your distances. Let's assume that it's a 12-inch row spacing. You're going to come in, mark your first spot. I know this is, I don't have my tape measure on me, but I know this is 2 foot, so I'm going to go by half. Call it another. And then now you can just come in to your cabinet, put your screw on there, and drill through. While you don't have to use both holes when securing the L bracket to the stick, I do recommend using both when you're securing it to the base and top of the cabinet.